Today, we've gathered together to make a public declaration about choosing community. Well, that might seem a little cliche to some. And that's why we have to talk about these things, to kind of pull ourselves down off of the superficiality of it and get down into the heart of a matter. Because there's something about community that, while it is common rhetoric, we must be missing something. Because I don't know about you, but the last time I checked, I'm grateful that 2016 is over, because it was anything but community. It was full of vitriol, vexation, and violence of all forms. And I thought, what manner of society are we living in? This is not what I thought I was growing up in. It is certainly not what I want my son to call the norm. In coming together publicly and making a declaration that we choose community, it does beg the question, how do we begin the discussion? The discussion is necessary because the times demand it. Our souls are hungry for it, and our history foretold it. We seem to be growing accustomed to the worst of humanity, demanding nothing more and expecting nothing less, so much so that our children have grown weary. I can't talk about community unless I talk about the generations beyond us. And our children, we see it in their eyes, have grown desperate and disillusioned from the relentless assault by a culture that has no regard for their lives, let alone their experiences. And yet, we say we are part of one of the greatest nations, if not the greatest nation in the world. And our children are rocking and reeling in the midst of what we grown folk have allowed. Here we are at this crossroads with a decision to make. The same question that Dr. King asked in the 1960s out of his last body of work. Based on all that we have accomplished, where do we go from here? But he began to examine that question by first asking this question: where are we? So social justice is an idea that is based on the concepts of human rights and equality, and more specifically speaks to the way in which human rights are manifested in the early lives of people, in the everyday lives of people at every level of society. And I would submit to you that a just society exists when all people share a common humanity and therefore have a right to equitable treatment, support for their human rights, and a fair allocation of community resources. Don't get confused by that last part, because there's some things that just ought to be. Every child ought to have a right to a wonderful and incredible education. Every child has a right to quality education. Every child has a right to a good breakfast and to a good lunch and a good meal. Do you understand what I'm saying? There are some things that are just basic human rights. And if I have had access to a quality education, quality health care, I have a roof over my head every night, and meals on the table, I want the same thing for you. And so in his final work, Where Do We Go From Here?, Dr. King asked the question, where are we, to begin his analysis of the aftermath of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It was a piece of legislation that many hailed as the greatest triumph since perhaps the Emancipation Proclamation. And the question served as a tool for the nation and oppressed people, not just people of color, but people oppressed by poverty or whatever their situation or circumstance, to explore the way forward to their best possibilities in the fight for social justice. what is happening, it is for us to get the best education that we can, because no matter what is happening, it's something that cannot be taken from you. Well, what is education about? Education is about opening up your mind to possibilities. It is about equipping you to access those things that we have made available. We know that education is vital to this whole idea of community. Not just this kumbaya kind of feeling, oh yeah, we feel warm and cozy with one another, but as a room full of educators and community leaders who believe in education, we then have to embrace the one thing that we have the power to change, that we know we can change, and that is the experience of individuals in our classroom. Choosing community starts here, in your belly. Do you choose it and believe in it enough that you're willing to make some changes, that you're willing to have some conversations with folk that don't look like you or didn't come from the same place you came from, in order to create this greater understanding of others? Community demands something of us. It demands the courage of our convictions. It demands the capacity to embrace change, to be willing to do something different, and it demands character. Community is possible, and I, for one, have committed to the concept, the ideal, because that's what makes us better. We start with ourselves and then connecting with one another, building a greater network. I'm for community. Today I choose community, and I hope that all of you, not only in choosing it, but will be willing to challenge others to do the same. Thank you.